Hello! So in this video I am going to go over the Nuke Titan build that I've been showcasing on my channel. It is a really fun build centered around doing absolutely ridiculous amounts of melee damage and nuking big chunky targets all at once. It is super fun and let's get right into it. So the build is centered around three key components, the first of which being the new Consecration Solar Aspect for Titans. This thing is absolutely disgusting. It just does stupid amounts of damage, which we will be buffing with another exotic. The second key element is the Monte Carlo exotic assault rifle. This thing is perfect for our build. It generates melee energy simply by hitting enemies with it, and when we kill enemies, it has a chance to fully refund our melee entirely, which is just perfect. So if you don't have this, I highly recommend attempting to acquire it because it is really, really good for any sort of melee-centric build. And last but not least, we have the Synthoceps exotic gauntlets. These will significantly buff our melee damage, and the crazy thing about them is that our build has functionally 4 separate melees available at any given time, by the way, and they all benefit from the Synthoceps buff. The melees being your regular melee, the throwing hammer, which I haven't been really using that much, but it is still incredibly strong, and then the two separate parts of the consecration, which are the uppercut and the slam. So yeah, Synthoceps getting a lot of mileage here. Our other aspect that we use is Roaring Flames. This is really nice. It buffs our melee damage even further, and even though it has recently been nerfed, specifically in the way in which it interacts with other exotics that boost melee damage, it is still very, very strong and well worth using. On the upside, it also has received a very nice change that makes our normal melees act as powered melees, just like they work in Void 3.0. What this means is that, and the way in which we take advantage of it, is that whenever we get a kill with a melee ability, and we proc Roaring Flames, then we can use our normal melee, and when we kill things with it, it'll still generate solar elemental wells, which is amazing. So great change, much appreciated. On our fragments down here, we have Ember of Empyrean. This is to loop our restoration and radiant buffs indefinitely by killing things with our melee, which we're doing literally all the time. Over here we have Amber of Torches. This is how we get radiant in the first place. The only way in which I personally take advantage of radiant is by using Monte Carlo. The way in which I enjoy playing the build is by completely ignoring my other two weapons and just shooting Monte Carlo and dropping nukes with Consecration. So Radiant is really nice for buffing Monte Carlo. And over here, this fragment right here is incredible. It has really good synergy with Consecration, and specifically the first part of it, the uppercut. So what happens is when you do the uppercut and you send out that wave of fire, that wave of fire will scorch enemies, and as you defeat them with the wave of fire, which by the way, reminder, is buffed by Synthoceps, you will get melee energy back. And if you have enough enemies in front of you and you kill them all with this first uppercut, you can drop down with your melee ability fully refunded, which is just incredible. So this one is really, really good. And over here we have the Amber of Solace, which is just a way to add a few extra seconds to our Radiant and Restoration, which is really nice. Now, a lot of Solar 3.0 builds that you see floating around these days are heavily reliant on the Classy Restoration mod to gain access to those ridiculous levels of sustainability to face tank basically all the harder content in the game, right? Which is great, but what are you gonna do when the the mod is removed next season? So what I did here is I've actually taken that mod off and replaced it with other sources of healing, which, whilst not being as effective, when combined with each other, will still achieve pretty much the same effect, right? So our main source of healing is the healing grenade. Now the healing grenade only gives you a ×1 restoration buff, which is not as good as the ×2, which Classy Restoration provides, and also a Lorelei Splendor, but we're not using that here. However, when combining, the ×1 restoration with our high resilience and the additional healing sources that I'll go over here momentarily, we still achieve basically the same effect. We're still incredibly tanky, we heal a lot of the damage, and it's great. So yeah. Over here on our weapons, once again, Monte Carlo is basically mandatory. It's really hard to pass on this. Our energy weapon is just there to stun champions, so you can literally use whatever you want. And the same applies for the heavy slot. I don't use my heavy whatsoever. The way in which I play this build, you are free to do as your heart desires. You can go nuts with whatever you want here. You can use whatever you want. Now, our stat spread, we need 100 resilience because the way in which they change resilience this season basically makes it the best PvE stat in the entire game. The damage reduction that you gain when at tier 10 is really significant, and it makes a huge difference in the way the game plays. So yeah, we need 100 resilience. Recovery is a shadow of its former self, and we really don't need this to be particularly high. You can run however you want. I run 4, I'm actually running 3, I get +10 from one of the fragments, but you don't really need as much recovery as you used to. And we want /need 100 discipline because we are going all in on healing grenades, so having them available to us as often as possible is obviously really nice. Intellect is a non-factor. I don't really use my super. You can use whatever you want. And strength obviously is a key factor of this build, and we can sort of make up for the difference in having low strength by using Monte Carlo. So you don't really need high strength on this build. Like, having high is obviously nice, but we gained our melee back so quickly by just shooting things with Monte Carlo and by proccing aspects and picking up wells, so you don't really need high strength. As for the mod setup on our armor, so on our helmet I am using Kinetic Siphon and High Energy Fire. Kinetic Siphon is there to proc one of the other sources of healing, and High Energy Fire is there to further enhance our Monte Carlo. On our Synthoceps, we have the champion mods of choice and a Well of Ordnance. The Well of Ordnance is really nice. Basically, when we pick up a well, not only do we gain the energy from picking the well up, but we also gain further grenade energy because of Well of Ordnance. So our grenade cooldown is reduced even further. On our chest piece, we are running the Armor of the Dying Star. This mod is amazing. It's basically the only mod I use from the artifact, other than the champion-related ones, because it's just so good, it's hard to pass. And with the Arc Resistance mod on our chest piece, we have all 3 elements covered this season. And we have our 1 melee Wellmaker here. This is the only one we have, and the only one we need, really, to proc a bunch of different things. The way the build synergizes, you only ever really need 1 well to pick up, and you will loop your abilities constantly. On our boots, we have our 2 extra sources of healing that take the place of Classy Restoration. We have Recuperation, so we get a chunk of health back whenever we pick up an orb, and once again we make that orb by killing things with Monte Carlo. And then we have Well of Life, which will give us some health regen whenever we pick up an elemental well, which is happening all the time. We also have Innervation here, which further reduces our grenade cooldown whenever we pick up an orb, so yeah. And on our class item, we have Double Bombers to even further reduce our grenade cooldown. So yeah, we are absolutely going all in on having healing grenades available to us as often as possible, and we have multiple ways to ensure that is the case. And over here we have Elemental Charge to get charged with light when we pick up a solar elemental well, to proc High Energy Fire and increase the damage that our Monte Carlo dishes out, or your heavy of choice, or your special of choice. And yeah, that's basically the build. I will have some footage of the K1 Communion Master Lost Sector playing here at the end. And thank you for watching, and see you next time.